Hello, welcome everybody. I love the library on a rainy day, so you are right where you're supposed to be. And thank you all for being here. And we are here to see Pendarvis Harshaw, Brandon Tauszik in combo with Nigel and Earlonne Woods, our 17th One City, One Book authors. The San Francisco, woo, yeah, woo, come on. You are here, right? Let's welcome our Zoom viewers and YouTube viewers as well. The San Francisco Public Library would like to acknowledge that we occupy the unceded ancestral homeland of the Ramaytush Ohlone peoples, who are the original inhabitants of the San Francisco Peninsula. We recognize that we benefit from living and working on their traditional home space, and as uninvited guests, we affirm their sovereign rights as First Peoples and wish to pay our respects to the ancestors, elders, and relatives of the Ramaytush community. And I encourage you all to check out Segorte Land Trust, an Oakland women-led group working in the land back movement. Also check out our website for an immense amount of reading lists on first-person culture. So this is part of our One City, One Book. And if you haven't seen all the advertising or the books, it's out there. Pick up one of these on your way out. It has the rest of the remaining programs for December in it. And we still have a packed house full of events, full of amazing people doing amazing work. So both in person and virtual. I'm going to tell you about 2 events, but we have way more, so please pick it up. Tomorrow, same place, an hour earlier, 1 p.m., we'll be looking at a film celebrating the life of Ronnie Goodman, who is an artist we love so much here and who loved us, formerly incarcerated and formerly unhoused, and has left this realm. And it's called He Had Wings. So come check that out tomorrow, 1 p.m. Next Sunday, December 11th, the amazing Sarah Cruzan in conversation with her co-author, Corey Thomas, talking about Cruzan's book, I Cried to Dream Again. Cruzan's story as a sexual survivor of childhood abuse and sex trafficking. It's honest, disturbing, and ultimately empowering story of her journey from abuse to incarceration without parole for killing her abuser, and finally gaining liberation. Cruzan is also featured on Ear Hustle's podcast, episode 13, called Dirty Water. The book is amazing. Please come to the event. I want to see a nice full house for Sarah. We are doing Q&A today. If you did not pick up your card to do the Q&A, that is how we're operating. You can wave your card at me or Alejandro or any one of the staff, and we'll grab your card and ask your question, maybe. Please join us after this event. Upstairs on the 5th floor, we'll have a reception, and there's a gallery exhibit of Brandon's photography and Penn's words. So please come check that out. We'll have some refreshments, some empanadas, 5th floor, 3:30. All right, so this event today was really a dream ask for me, and I didn't anticipate anybody saying yes. So I love that when that happens. And then it grew into so much more. So I'm very excited for this to happen. Of course, we have today Pendarvis Harshaw and Brandon Tauszik in conversation with Nigel and Earlonne Woods, discussing Facing Life, a project chronicling the experiences of the 8 individuals living through reentry and serving life prison sentences in California. The visuals are by Brandon Tauszik and the words by Pendarvis Harshaw. And then of course, afterwards, come upstairs. Pendarvis Harshaw, as you might know from Right Now-ish, is a renowned journalist and educator based in Sacramento and Oakland. He has taught journalism to high school students as well as incarcerated men. He's a staff writer and podcast producer at KQED, as well as a graduate of UC Berkeley School of Journalism. His first book, OG Told Me, is a memoir-style collection of essays about his coming-of-age experience as a Black man in America. Brandon Tauszik is a documentary photographer and filmmaker based in Los Angeles and Oakland. His long-term projects examine elements of American societal periphery. His most recent works have incorporated the largely unexplored medium of cinemagraphs, a delicate hybrid between the still image and film. They are beautiful, so please check out Facing Life website. Nigel is a visual artist and photography professor at CSU Sacramento. Her work has exhibited nationally and internationally, including the SF MoMA and the De Young. Poor got involved with San Quentin State Prison as a volunteer teacher for the Prison University Project. Prison University Project will be here in February, so stay tuned for that. In November 2018, Earlonne Woods' 31 years to life sentence was commuted after 21 years of incarceration. While incarcerated, he received his GED, attended Coastline Community College, and completed many vocational programs. He also founded Choose One, which aims to repeal the California 3 Strikes Law, the statute under which he was sentenced. His efforts with Choose One continue as he advocates for restorative justice and works to place the repeal initiative on the ballot. And of course, together, they make up the Pulitzer Prize nominated co-creators, co-hosts, and co-producers of Ear Hustle, and this year's One City, One Book authors. So please join us in a big round of applause for today's panel. Nigel, Brandon Tauszik, Earlonne, and Pendarvis Harshaw. Thank you, everybody.
What up, dog?
Uh-oh.
Check, check.
Check one, check, check, check.
Sorry, we had to make
Hello?
sure we had water. We're on? Okay,
All right,
excellent.
We're good.
Okay. I have my phone here, not because I'm rude, but because I have to keep a check on time. So don't judge. Okay. So everybody, welcome. We are so excited to be here today to highlight and to celebrate Brandon and Pendarvis's beautiful project, Facing Life. We're going to talk about how they met. We're going to talk about the nature of collaboration, the aesthetics of the project, some difficult questions about prison reform. We're going to bring up a special guest. We're going to give you an opportunity to ask questions. And then at the end of the event, we're all going to go up and see some beautiful photographs together where we can have a more casual conversation.
Yeah, up on the bridge.
Yes. And we'll remind you when this is over. All right. So
Well-
again, welcome everyone. I'm good. Do you want some water?
Thank you. Thank you. It was only a corner. But first, we're going to start this off by watching a video from Pendarvis and Brandon that puts this project in perspective.
2 minutes.
Video,
Hey,
please.
My name is Pendarvis Harshaw.
And my name is Brandon Tauszik. We're the duo behind the multimedia documentary project, Facing Life.
In it, we profile 8 people who've all spent significant amounts of time incarcerated in California prisons. All of them but one are former lifers. After California was federally mandated to depopulate its overcrowded prison system in 2006, a number of laws were passed that changed the way that people are sentenced in this state. In turn, thousands of people serving long-term sentences were released, leaving the question to be asked, who's there to assist their successful reentry?
Lifers, as this population of people is often referred to, have a recidivism rate of around 1%. So the issue is not their return to prison. But when it comes to people who serve 30 to 40 years behind bars, integrating back into our fast-paced modern society can prove to be very difficult.
So we chose 8 individuals, 5 men and 3 women, and for the past 3 years, we've charted their movements. We took note of their housing, employment, health, family, and more. We interviewed them multiple times, often in their homes. The goal was to get an understanding of what it's like for them on a daily basis.
Over the course of the project, we produced cinemagraphs, 360 VR, video, and written content. All of it lives on our website, www.facing.life.
This project, backed by the Pulitzer Center, will add to the ongoing conversation about incarceration in the United States, from disparities in sentencing to conditions within the prisons to what people are dealing with once they're out.
As you'll see in this project, this isn't just a story that impacts a small segment of the population, but in a country with the highest number of incarcerated people in the world, and in a state that leads all others in life sentencing, this impacts us all.
The goal of this project is to give stakeholders and elected officials some insight into what's at stake, and at the same time, make sure that everyday people, potential employers, educators, folks who work in the public service positions, look at people who are formerly incarcerated as people, not as formerly incarcerated.
We'd like to thank our participants, Jose, Lynn, Traviel, Gary, Fahim, Robin, Melvin, and Myra, as well as the countless organizations that helped us along the way. The full project is available to experience now at www.facing.life.
Thank you. Peace.
It's a great introduction to the project.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for letting us show that.
Thank
Before we start the questions, I just want to again say isn't it nice to see so many people here?
I was
Yes,
taking
thanks
that
for
in.
coming.
It's really
Yeah, Thank you
great.
for being here.
People we know and people we don't know. So thank you all for coming out on a rainy Saturday. It's wonderful. Okay, so can we start with can you tell us how you met and why you decided to work together? Like what drew you to each other?
I think it's one of those things where in the arts community and really, I mean, any community, you have those friends where you can't really date back where you met them. It's like, I don't know, they just popped up in your life. I don't know, this guy just happened to be here. We've known each other for some time. I think we knew of each other's work at first. I'm a big fan of Brandon's photography work. And when the opportunity came up, the Pulitzer Center is opened the doors for reporting on domestic stories about jails, prisons, mass incarceration. Brandon approached me knowing that I'm interested in stories about prison. I'd worked in San Quentin with the San Quentin News. I'd worked with California Medical Facility. And Brandon said, hey, that work you're doing in prisons, why don't we do something else about it? And I knew about what the state of California was doing to depopulate its overcrowded prisons. And I said, hey, there's a story here. And knowing what Brandon does with his photography, we wanted to pull that into this story.
Yeah, and not having we had the grant from the Pulitzer Center, but we didn't have a publication. It's an independent project, so getting inside facilities or prisons would have been very difficult without that. So that's why we kind of pivoted toward reentry.
Yeah.
And I know you kind of just answered that, but Brandon, what does PN bring to this project that you don't, and vice versa?
Yeah, I mean, this was a real treat. A lot of my longer term projects have been just by myself in the past. And then with a subject matter like this, I did not feel comfortable doing it alone or doing the reporting just because I don't know enough about, mass incarceration. There's so many complexities. And when making representational work or documentary work, I take that responsibility seriously. So I didn't want to kind of like misrepresent anything in that scenario. So our working dynamic was beautiful for the first time for me, working with someone else, not alone. So kind of having that division of labor between the reporting and the storytelling and then the visuals. It was great. Yeah.
This guy's a crazy metabolism. He just doesn't stop. And so having somebody like that, an accountability partner, right? Like having a teammate to work on a project, we conceived of this idea back in 2018. Life has changed for all of us since then, but to have somebody to constantly check in with and say, hey, what's going on with that draft of that essay? It definitely helped to push me over. So I did the writing, he did the photography, but we all shared responsibilities.
Yeah.
I got a question.
What's happening?
Man, did y'all call me?
Yes.
I told you Nigel didn't call me. I could not find the email. I was like, I think they got at me. I think they reached out to me.
Yeah.
No, you weren't out. We started in 2018.
No,
I got out 2018.
but early,
No, I could have sworn Pendarvis that got at me about this project.
from knowing about your work through San Quentin, right? So I just started reaching out to all of the people who I knew through the San Quentin News to say, hey, I'm doing this project. Because even though I had a foot in that work, I needed to learn a lot more. There's a lot of terminology and just things I just needed to know. And so, yes, you were on the list, but
Did he?
But-
But did he ever get back to you?
we're here now.
Okay,
That's what
all right.
matters. We're here now.
That's my
That's
partner.
how you get me,
That's my
Nigel.
partner.
To that point, though, Earlonne is a special case. Obviously, he came out as a bona fide celebrity. We wanted really middle road people.
This is going to be a really
Thank you,
interesting
Brandon.
thing to talk
Appreciate
about. But we definitely want to talk about that because reentries, I'm going to jump the gun, but very different for different people. And so let's remember to come back to that topic. I just want to say it's not easy to find a good working partner. And when you do find someone you get along with, you just emotionally and then artistically, it's really magic. So, I mean, I feel blessed that we've found each other to work with. Do you have that feeling?
And definitely, yeah. I mean, it's very similar kind of dynamic, pairing up and division of labor with what you guys do with the podcast and what we did on the project. But yeah, I mean, it was years of work on and off through the pandemic. And then, since the project came out this spring, we've been touring it all over the country, and knock on wood, we still have not gotten in a single fight, which is pretty crazy.
But and we are a counterbalance. I'm very laid back. He's
Well, I
relatively
noticed who
fiery.
was here early and who waltzed in just a few minutes before we were about to
Yeah,
start.
exactly. We're counterbalance and explicitly speaking, like white guy, black guy, that kind of thing. But realizing that I've gone to college twice, and so I have those conversations with the judges that we met with. The judge that we met with, Brandon has spent a night in jail, and
Couple nights.
couple nights, and so he has that conversation with folks, and so it's not the connections that we would thought we would make.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, I want to talk a little bit about the aesthetics of the project. You mentioned the cinegraphs. Is that
GIFs. I mean, I would rather say GIFs, but they're not GIFs. It's cinemagraphs.
a cinegraph is much more
Cinematograph.
beautiful than
Kinda like a
GIFs.
photograph, but with cinema.
Yeah.
Dope too.
They're really beautiful.
Thank
You
you.
can notice that they're very subtle, moving. You can almost miss it if you don't look carefully. And that idea that you could miss the movement makes me think about the project that you're doing, both in the photographs and in the interviews, that if you're not attuned to little details, you miss so much in storytelling. So just as a metaphor, I think those cinegraphs are really beautiful for your project. And so in the project, there's all different kinds of media. So there's the cinegraphs, they're the videos, they're the 360s, and there's also the writing. And so I'm just curious about those choices. Are there times when it's still image just fails? And so you felt like you had to find a different way to think about the visual presentation, and we'll get to the writing part. But I'm really curious about why no still images?
Yeah, I mean, I love photography. I work with photography, and I also work in filmmaking and with film. So I've made projects that are only comprised of still images, and I've made, documentary films. But around the time that Penn and I met, actually, he was publishing a project that lived on Tumblr when, Tumblr had its first wave back in like 2012, called OG Told Me. And I was really falling in love with GIFs for the first time that were really exploding on that platform on Tumblr. And it being kind of a hybrid medium between stills and video, didn't see anyone working with it like in the documentary or editorial space. So
Yeah.
a project that I made back then, which caught Penn's eyes, Tapered Throne, was the first time that I worked with it. And I wasn't sure like if that project, if it would work, maybe it would be corny, maybe it would be cheesy, maybe no one would like it, but I really enjoyed working with it as kind of like a photo plus, or like just a hybrid medium between the two that can, convey more than a still photograph can, because, I enjoy working with the tools at our disposal. Although I love photo books, like we're not consuming our media on the
Mhm.
printed page anymore, really. It's on screens. So it's like using the tools that we have at our disposal.
Yeah. Could
to
we
tell.
look at the 360?
This has audio if you go on the website, but we're
can.
going to play it silent. But yeah, I mean, the goal of the project was immersion.
Mhm.
Penn and I could have made a film, but we wanted to create this digital story that lives for free online forever for anyone. You can scroll through it in a couple minutes if you're in a rush, or you can sit with it for 45 minutes and really go deep. And
Yeah.
so, and we've had part of our audience goal was currently and formerly incarcerated people, and as far as currently incarcerated, I think in the spring, I don't know if Jesse's here, but I think we're going to get it in the San Quentin News, so that'll go inside.
Oh.
But we've also had both Penn and I, when the project came out, DMs on Instagram and stuff from people on their prison phones that were passing it around and viewing it inside. So that was really cool.
Interesting.
Yep.
Okay, I just want to push you a little bit more on this. So the 360s, they're not chaotic, but there's so much going on in them, right? You're really moving around the space very quickly. And in the cinegraphs, it's so subtle. So can you just talk about that different impulse between this, having that subtle visual and the more, it's not speeded up, but I mean, some people might even feel a little bit vertigo when they see the 360.
Well, that Gary one particularly, mostly, the camera was mounted on a shopping cart and we were going all over the place. But much, with Jose, it's just like him at a family barbecue making tacos. With Myra, it's her at her church praying with her pastor. So it was just a way to kind of give the viewer authorship, which is what I really like about 360. So like you navigate around the scene, you look at what you want to look at versus, read my text or look at this picture that I framed,
Well, the cinegraphs, it's interesting you talk about viewer authorship, because I don't know if anyone in the audience felt this way when you first saw them. Did you trust your eye that something was actually happening? Right, because we're so used to seeing still photographs and we accept the truth of a still photograph. And We're not so used to seeing this subtle movement. So it has a nice way of bringing the viewer in and having them question what they're seeing and then have a recognition. And I think that really helps you connect with the subject of the photograph and then think about like why, for example, is the choice to have the dog's tail move or what is the little detail that the photographers decided to give motion to. So it's conceptually, I think it's really interesting.
Awesome, thanks. Yeah, and Penn usually has a good point about kind of slowing down and tying into the thesis of the project.
It's a metaphor in its face. We wanted this project to give people a reason to slow down and be people and interact. If you go to the story of Traviel shared with us that at the DMV one day, he's trying to get his paperwork straight and he almost broke down, frustrated with paperwork, and he had to let the person working the desk know, like, hey, I've recently been released from prison. Could you possibly assist me? And that person slowed down and said, baby, welcome home. I'll help you with your paperwork. And so this project is threefold. We wanted it to, one, approach the stakeholders and say, hey, this change that's happening in California's prisons. This is the impact. Two, people who are incarcerated or formerly incarcerated to see themselves represented in media. Three, to the everyday gatekeepers in our society, say, hey, you have an opportunity to make a change. You might not know it, but you as an employer, as an educator, as a person working at the DMV, you interact with people who are in this position and you can do something to assist them by simply slowing down and working with people.
That story is so beautiful. When I read it on the website, I got a little bit teary and it reminded me of how it's so important, as you said, to slow down, but to interact with people. And the way that he said to her so directly, I've just gotten out of prison, I need help. And instead of her getting angry, it brought out something really lovely in her. And it reminds you the importance of speaking up and asking questions and then listening to what people have to say. And then you end up with this, this small interaction that's incredibly memorable.
It changed his reentry trajectory.
Yeah.
And I want to ask you, do having all these different medias make you write different?
Yeah, it does. It does. There's a clip with Lynn that we often share. It's a very sweet clip where she talks about enjoying a pumpkin spice latte. And it's one of those things where it's like, you got to see it and feel Lynn just enjoying that pumpkin spice latte. And if I would have written it, that was cool. I'd have told the story. But because Lynn tells that story, I can write around it, and so it takes a little weight off my shoulders.
And that's been my mission. I was going to go order one of them just to have the feeling. I don't like pumpkin though, but
I know you don't. Wait, so working with a writer, has it changed your visual approach?
Yeah, I mean, I could just not, I could just focus on stay in my lane instead of, worrying about the politics or the policy or, the story and all the complexities that go along with, how to represent someone in that format.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was incredible. I don't know if I'll want to make a project by myself ever again.
But in the same breath, though, like that means that I can focus on the writing that's front facing and he can do all the emails behind the scenes.
It's all about finding the right partner.
Exactly.
ooh,
Right, the emails
y'all,
behind the
hey,
scenes.
y'all us. I ain't gonna lie.
Wait, have you gotten all curious about picking up a camera?
Yeah, I've done all forms. I went to school
Okay.
for documentary film.
Oh, of
Yeah,
course.
he's a photographer
Okay,
in his own
okay,
right.
all
Yeah,
right.
and he did all the interviews and when we were filming. And
Okay, okay. So I'm wondering about when you're dealing with a subject that's really political and difficult, how do you think about the aesthetics, the beauty? Because certainly they're beautiful portraits. The website's put together in a way that's going to really encourage the viewer to spend a lot of time there. So yeah, how do you think about the importance of beauty to get people to connect?
Yeah, Gage. Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, the project isn't, it deals with dark topics, but I wouldn't say that I don't think Facing Life is like a subject matter wise, like a dark project or a depressing project.
Mhm.
So it's really like a hopeful project. It's really like, okay, starting from day one, you know, building a life out here in society. So it was kind of about translating those moments, those like first moments, like Myra's first oil change, or like, you know, Jose's first job, and like finding those special moments and trying to portray those
Mhm.
visually. Yeah.
Yeah. How do you think about beauty in your writing?
The question brought to mind, if we could click on Jose's photo.
I don't think we can.
Oh, we can't. Oh, can't. Oh, okay. Oh, we can't. Oh, can't access it. No, at the bottom of Jose's profile. Unfortunately, Jose is the one person we profiled who has passed. He passed due to complications related to COVID after being released. His story in brief is that he had a life of in and out of detention centers. As a young person, he found safety in going to juvenile hall to escape his abusive father. While he was incarcerated for a longer period of time as an adult, he realized he wanted to get his stuff straight so he could be home for his daughter. He gets out, he gets on his feet, he's operating, living life. He passes. His final request after passing is to be buried next to his father. And so when he passed, Brandon made it a mission to go to his gravesite with Jose's fiance and take a photo. And there's a subtle pinwheel moving, and there's like flowers, and it's heavy, it's sweet, it's beautiful.
So on that, I want to ask you, like, why did y'all decide to like put people crimes in y'all piece? You know, because at Ear Hustle, we try to just let people see people, you know what I'm saying, and not say what happened unless it's germane to the crime. Was that a big decision for y'all? And if so, why?
Yeah, it was hard for me because now I've spent 3 years with this person, right? And I need to explicitly say this person took somebody's life. And writing that, I was kind of beating around the bush. And my editor was like, say it, like for the reader. This person has told you this, and it's something that is, if we want to understand this person as a fool, you have to understand some of the egregious things that have occurred in their life. And so we made a conscious decision to put it in there, but not to harp on it, but to state it clearly and also make sure that it's sandwiched in between. This is their childhood experience. This is what happened that led to them being incarcerated. This is what they experienced while incarcerated. This is their reentry, and this is where they are now in life. And so you see that full spectrum of a person.
Yeah, because that's a hard one, man. Like, it's certain, like, even with Ear Hustle, it's certain cases that people may not want to hear, and we actually tackled a couple of them, just trying to see how people respond to them, you know, and if we can cover certain topics, you know. So
Yeah, yeah, I have a couple questions about this. How did you think about satisfying people's curiosity versus working as a journalist and artist to do what's right for the project, and then thinking about the people that you are working with? So there's like there's like this
Yeah.
triangle.
Yeah.
And where did you decide to put the weight for the decision?
On me. um, you talk to somebody for 3.5 years consistently, you get their full life story, and then to have to compress it and fit it into a website, it's like, oh man, there's so much left on the chopping board, you know.
Yeah.
And so those first edits were really hard, and to hear time and time again, like I'm listening to audio, people talk about some pretty heavy stuff. I had to step away from the project a lot. But in stepping away from the project, that allowed me to reapproach the project with fresh eyes and say, oh, okay, I can see how we can simplify this, or make sure that everything, as much as possible, is told in this story. And so in terms of satisfying an audience, I was really just thinking of like, what I need to be clear about this person's story. And I want to make sure that this person is properly represented. They gave us their life story, and make sure that the audience understands why I'm telling this story, why these details are included, why a pumpkin spice latte is significant in the scope of things.
Yeah. How did you think about that?
About the question again?
Well, it's just where does the responsibility, who are you responsible for? The audience who you clearly want to affect. You want their attention, and you want their hearts and minds, or you as an artist and a creative person, or the subject that you're dealing with. How do you think about those three responsibilities, and who wins out?
Yeah, I mean, when we were very transparent with everyone up front about, the stories that we were going to tell, and yes, we're going to mention the crime, and no, you're not going to have editorial control. And there were some people that we met that were like, I don't think I want to participate in this. And
Yeah.
we were like, that's totally fine. The 8 that we did end up with, our incredible participants, all were okay with that from the get-go. And when we put out the project, we didn't like run anything by them at first. We were very nervous, especially Penn, because he did all the writing. He was like, is Lynn gonna hate me for what I wrote? But everyone was like really positive about everything and how it turned out. So that was great.
So y'all didn't, excuse me, did anyone like didn't want to talk about their crimes? Because I know sometimes when you have individuals that take someone's life, they don't want to get out here and talk about it like that. They just want to blend right in and not affect, well, be it the victim's family or stuff like that. And so y'all didn't have that issue?
No, and I think, back to your question about why include the crimes is because not everyone here was directly involved with the taking of a life. Like not everyone killed someone.
Right.
Lynn, Myra, Melvin. Melvin's gun was used in a murder, and a law has now changed in the state. But back in the late 80s or the early 90s, if your gun was used in a murder, then you could get charged with first-degree murder. So that's how we ended up with a life sentence. So that's important to note,
Yeah, it was very upsetting to read about some of the reasons that people got life sentences. I think there are 3 people, right? Who I guess is the word accessory. Yeah, that was shocking. I don't want to harp on the crimes, but I do have one more question and I'm hesitant to ask it. But as Earlonne said, at Ear Hustle, we almost never talk about people's crimes unless it's important to the story. And we've pushed back on editors and we've pushed back on listeners who want to know more. And I really stand behind that. Then when I was looking at your website, I found myself wanting to know the crimes. And I was like, well, why is that? Why is it so different? I'm just curious I'm curious about what anyone has to say about that, like why I'm so clear in our own work, why we do it. But then I had a curiosity when I saw your work. I don't know what that says, but it bothered me.
Is that the medium because you're in audio and you're reading print with ours, or
I don't know what it was, but I was like, oh, curious. I want to know.
is it because you already know yours?
Oh my God, maybe. Well, that doesn't make me very generous to our listeners who want to know.
Exactly.
No, but actually, you know what? A lot of times I don't know. I don't
Okay.
ask people unless it's part of the story.
I think with us, it's more of, I don't want to say safety and security. I want to say it's just a realm of security we don't have to deal with especially when we're dealing with people that's incarcerated. There's a lot of checks and balances. So sometimes it's not cool to put it in there, but most of the time we want the listener to just hear the story and not be sidetracked by the crime sometimes.
Yeah.
Oftentimes you talk to people who are incarcerated, correct? Like
Oh
that's
yeah,
the
almost
majority of
always.
everything.
Yeah,
And so
majority.
and talking to the people we talk to, everybody has approached the board and successfully passed the board, and they've stood in their story multiple times.
Yeah.
They're unfortunately used to telling their story to an audience.
Yeah.
And so standing in their story is actually really impressive as a human. Just like, yeah.
Transparent. People be
Transparency.
transparent after being so long.
Yeah.
But I'm also realizing after looking at your project that people have curiosity, and it's not always wrong to have curiosity and want to know. Like it's not always for negative or judgmental reasons. It's just human curiosity. So anyway, it gave me something to think about in our stories. And I don't necessarily say that we're going to change how we do our stories, but it really gave me a lot to think about.
Yeah. And it was something we thought about as
Yeah,
well.
it's a huge conversation. It's a really important conversation to have.
Yeah.
Because obviously for any project, creating trust with people is really important and they need to know that you're not going to do them wrong. Yeah. Yeah.
So Nigel told y'all that we have a special guest and she's here. Her name is Lynn. We
Yeah.
want to welcome her to the stage.
Round of applause for Lynn, please.
Yes.
Come on.
Hello.
Hello.
Welcome.
Hi.
So good to see you.
Good to see you too.
You've been mentioned already several times.
I have.
Then you have a
Somebody in the
back.
crowd.
Oh, I know. I have my husband here and several of the ladies that are formerly incarcerated, my support system, my family that
That's
are
what's
here.
up.
And then over here to your right,
Hey. Hello.
We hear y'all, Myra. What's up?
and also while we're here, Fahim is here as well.
Also from the project. Hey, Fahim.
Fahim.
Yes, yes.
It's beautiful. We've done presentations now, about 10 of them,
Over a dozen.
over a dozen of them. And we've only had 2 with people who have been featured in the project
Oh.
there. So this is the first
Hey, you
time
got
there's
the
been
whole crew
multiple
almost.
folks here.
Yeah.
So thank you.
Yeah, thank you for coming up, down, over.
We're actually in Fresno now.
Yeah.
So, yeah. a few hours away.
So you're- yeah.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, yes. So why did you, well, first of all, how did they get in touch with you and why did you decide to say yes to this project?
Honestly, I do not remember right now.
Uncommon law.
Oh, Uncommon Law. The Uncommon Law was a law firm that represented me for my parole board hearing. And so, thank you, Brandon. That's how I was contacted. And I felt that it was really important because Uncommon Law took my case pro bono, which is at no cost. I'd written them for several years asking, would you consider taking my case? This is the work that I've done since I've been in, from starting at the gate up until now. They reviewed it, decided to take me to board, and I was very thankful and grateful for that. It's an opportunity a lot don't have. Otherwise, I would have gone with a public defender and may have not had the additional work on myself that the Uncommon Law team really worked with me. And in getting out, I just felt really humbled and really grateful. And it was an opportunity to give back and to give a little more insight on the reentry process and just break some of the stigma with incarceration and reentering back into society. Because after 20 years, and it was my first offense, it was really, really difficult. And so it was a good give back for me to bring awareness to the community that I was returning to and to educate more people.
So what was your first impression of these two gentlemen when you met them?
You know, both Brandon and Penn were really, they have really great, kind hearts, really wonderful personalities. They made me feel really comfortable in working with them. And as a survivor of much, working with two men again, a level of safety and trust was there that I felt.
Yeah.
It was a little bit of a risk for me, but I felt
Mm.
comfortable with them just because of the two men that they are. So it ended up working quite nicely.
Excellent.
Pumpkin spice latte. Huh?
You know what? I had heard about it. I had to have one.
Well, can we let
We
the
might as well
video-
play that video. We've been
We
talking
about
about
to
this
play
whole
that
time. Let's
video
play it.
right
You know
now.
what, Earlonne, thank you. The taste of a pumpkin spice latte. I remember seeing it in a magazine going, I want to try pumpkin spice latte. I really want to put that on my list of want to do's. And actually going to Starbucks and seeing the busyness of Starbucks now, but having that pumpkin spice latte in my hand and just the first sip of it. And I remember I just closed my eyes for a second and I'm like, wow, something that tastes, just brought my taste buds to life. It's not Taster's, it's not instant Folgers or Taster's Choice coffee, just being so grateful for that feeling. And then I remember drawing it close and going, now, why are all these people moving so fast? Maybe they've had a whole lot of Starbucks coffee.
So, all right, just show of hands if physically able, if you know what Starbucks is. Okay, cool. Show of hands if you're physically able, if you had a pumpkin spice latte before. All right, cool. So when you share this clip, when we take this project to college classes, people who've never been in prison, don't have family in prison, a pumpkin spice latte is something like, oh, wait, I can relate to that though. I can relate to wanting that, but not having it, never have had that.
Yeah.
And the conversations that come from that clip are mind blowing to me because it allows us to make this project more relatable, especially because, candidly speaking, a lot of people think of mass incarceration as Black and brown men, which there are a lot of Black and brown men in prison, and as a white woman speaking about your incarceration experience, people are like, what? It's happening across the board, everyone? And so thank you for sharing that. And thank you for playing that clip.
Hold on. You don't drink Tasters and Folgers no more?
There's nothing wrong with Tasters ever.
Okay, I'm about to say I was.
I got to stay humble and thankful. Starbucks is,
Indeed.
you know, that's for rich folks. It's good, but there's a lot of hype behind it. I'm good with Folgers.
All right, cool.
Stay true.
I think I switched to Tasters, but I got them both.
All right.
There's so many things about that clip that are really wonderful. One, it focuses on a small detail, which is to me what always makes a story most interesting, that it's about having your first taste of this pumpkin spice. And then you think that's the whole story, but then you talk about something to me that's even perhaps more important, and that's seeing everybody rushing around you. And so it has delight and surprise, and then something that makes everybody think. more deeply about their own experience. And so it's really connective too. And I'm wondering about other experiences that you had with this feeling of people rushing around you and maybe feeling like, why, was it just that they had too much coffee or is other stuff happening?
I think in in re-entering society, especially the first few months, I can only liken it to having almost an alien experience where you're being reintegrated into something foreign, and everything was fast. I mean, when I went in 1998, there was still computers they were there, but they were fairly new. I remember when a cell phone came out and it was like the size of 2 bricks put together. Beepers were just, we still had beepers, but the fast pace of everything was mind blowing. I mean, going into a store like Costco after you're in a contained environment for so long and all the choices, I mean, you just get stuck looking at all the choices that are there and the opportunity, and it's okay to touch something, and just the hustle and bustle of how people move without, I don't know, lack of empathy. It's just where's human kindness seemed to be kind of shoved by the wayside. I mean, standing in a line and seeing an elder be bumped and nobody's going to say anything. There's a problem here, and how quick everything is. I think even with children being digitally connected, having a conversation like we're having now, a lot of kids don't know how to do it. They don't know how to write in cursive, let alone have a conversation. And just those subtle little things took some time to get used to. It still does. I think just the fast movement of everything, people just take a deep breath and just look around at all the beauty that we're surrounded with. But then again, when you don't have it and it's taken from you, the level of appreciation in getting that opportunity, I feel it's a humbling responsibility and a reminder of where I was at, and that it can be taken that fast. And so it just took a while to get used to. And it still does. I just look around and go, wow, if we could just all pause and just think of what we're thankful for, what we're grateful for, and what is important.
That's a good lesson for everybody, that being grateful and being in the moment. Yeah.
So Lynn, you talked about finding a community of fellow former lifers when you got out, and I'm sure it has its pros and cons. Do you mind speaking to that?
Sure.
To that community?
Well, I think what's important in it is, one, a lot of the time, well, let me speak for myself. I'm originally from another state, so my family wasn't near, my blood family. The family of my choosing, some of them are sitting in here today, that when things were rough, when things are tough, when I was struggling to find my voice again, there are women in this room today that helped me, that helped me find that. And it's something that when losses happened and you can't go home for that, when you're struggling with something, when you're in a college course and you needed help with anything, sisters on the inside were there for you when blood family couldn't be. And in coming out, people that know, I don't have to say, I don't know how to do this, or I don't understand, or I'm feeling a whole lot of anxiety right now because I don't understand how to do this. Like you were talking about earlier, going to the DMV and somebody showing the gentleman kindness that was there. Yeah, after going out, everything, the process of everything is different. Even getting on a bus when you first get out, it's not like you can put change into anything, but you aren't told that when you get out. So the formerly incarcerated brothers and sisters that know are the ones that you can go to for assistance because they understand. And as opposed to asking somebody who looks at you like, what's your major malfunction? How come you don't understand how to do this? Even in like navigating and going back and taking more college courses and things, even getting into a system in the school. people don't understand, but that's why it's important for reentry programs that they have now for formerly incarcerated, because they can help you with those things because they do understand. And I was fortunate enough to go to a veterans reentry program, and the gentlemen that were there before, I was actually only the third female that had been there in that program. So for me, it was more the gentlemen that were there before, and they were respectful, kind, open, and they understood because they had been there before. So it was already an unspoken system in place of helping the next one.
Yeah.
Reach one, teach one.
Yeah.
On the note of that transitional home, go back. Who's on the screen and how did you meet him?
This is actually my husband, Christopher, who's here in the front row. He is actually an Army veteran and a former lifer himself. And we were able to meet at the veterans program that we were both at in Monterey, California. And he was out for some time before me. And yeah, like I said, he is one of the many miracles in my reintegration into society. God restores things that were lost and I'm grateful every day for him.
Thank you. And thank you. Indeed. So, Fahim, stand up, man.
Peace, bro.
So me and Fahim, we go back to like the probably late 80s, early 90s in the Youth Authority. I think we were the only two individuals in the Youth Authority wearing silk shirts and outfits, and everybody else was probably wearing the shirt I got on today. But we was definitely some youngsters. So to see this man doing so good out here and to see that he was a part of this project, it was really cool. So I just want to say I'm proud of you, man, and I'm glad that you're out here. I'm glad you're a part of this, and I'm definitely proud of what you're out here doing, helping the community. He said one more time.
What I would like to say about this young man, Earlonne, yes, we go way back. And so when I found out what he was doing for the podcast, Ear Hustle, I was incarcerated. I was taking a lifers program. And so I didn't know anything about podcasts. And so some staff from San Quentin came to Folsom. They said, Fahim, you need to listen to this. I'm like, I'm not listening to none of that. But I had an illegal cell phone. Right? I needed it. That was my contact, an illegal cell phone. So I turned on this podcast. I'm listening to it. Like, that voice is kind of familiar. And I was constantly seeing his face around on the social media, news herps. I'm like, man, I know this guy. I couldn't put it together. Mind you, we're in our late 40s now, my early 50s. And so one day I reached out to someone. I said, can I say your old name? Sure. He said, is that E-Mac? He said, E-Mac? I'm like, yeah, from 76 East Coast. Oh, damn. I got to go back. So now we giving people a good understanding of who we are and through our maturity. Myself being from the Bay Area, him being from LA. At the time, different social geographics, we was feuding in prison, but not him and I. So our understanding as kids connected us then, but we never knew how we was going to, catch back up now, brother. And I appreciate you, everything you've been doing, Brandon, Penn, Lynn, Nigel, and your entire project. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
100 years. That's his project. 100 years.
Yeah, check out his podcast. To be clear, he's doing work in Vallejo, training. How often are the trainings?
Teamwork makes the dream work.
Teamwork.
Well,
Are we
thank
going to turn to the audience?
We got one more question.
All right, cool,
One more
'cause
question, which also can go to the audience. But so looking on the website, I came away with some common themes that are challenges for people. And I was wondering if Lynn and both of you could speak to some of the common themes that you've experienced with other people who've gotten out and things that you discovered through talking with people. What are sort of the common challenges and maybe some of the common joys for people when they get out of prison?
I think the biggest challenge was technology, because it's ever evolving. I still feel like the smartest woman alive when I can answer my phone and not hang up on somebody accidentally. But yeah, technology, hands down, is years back, they used to have a reentry class, but it wasn't focused on technology. It was more, let's get a resume put together.
Yeah.
But the challenges that you face when you get out, even something as simple as getting ID again, because after 10 years, you're a ghost in the system. And I came out, I didn't even have the prison. For those who have never been incarcerated, you have a state issued ID, which is your name and the number that CDC issues you. But when you go out and you've been gone for years, getting an ID again, if you don't have all of your paperwork, your social security card again, your ID, all those things can be very, very challenging if you don't have somebody assisting with you and finding them. And then just navigating, oh goodness, what's a card with a chip in it? How come people don't use a lot of hard cash anymore? Those simple things that people take for granted because they haven't been where we've been. Trying to figure that out is technology is the number one thing, because currently the Department of CDCR does not offer a lot when it comes to you're reentering society after an extended amount of time. This is what you need to know. So the only need to know is, again, the connections with people who've been out before you, who've experienced the same thing, to help you navigate that, because they don't have the time and the resource, and the emphasis isn't there. Yes, there's been some shift in programming in the system right now, but when it comes to successful reentry and understanding those very basic things, it has come. So in my experience, it has come from my peers. But again, technology is probably the most challenging thing that I can think of.
And what did you two walk away with as some of the common challenges?
The details around technology is what got me first. It's like, yeah, duh, Bluetooth. That's something that like we kind of just know and didn't think about. Like Brandon pointed out to us that like in our lifetime, human evolution in terms of technology is just like possibly the most it's ever involved.
Yeah.
Like, and so that is something that blew my mind. The details about what people have missed in the time being away, like metal hitting their teeth as they're eating from like utensils, like fork and knife kind of thing. And then the intangible of it's almost like a PTSD of being incarcerated. And then one of the people we talked to shared with us like that like resting mean face that you have when you're incarcerated to like keep people away from you, and realizing like you can't have that when you're walking around with your kids, or like he's a reverend now. And so you just can't have that same disposition.
That one really struck me
Mean
on
mugging.
the website.
Yeah, mean mugging. Yeah, exactly. Somebody else who we talked to like for background shared with us that one of the things that they went to when they first got out was the Warriors celebration parade, like championship parade, and just how paranoid they were about people being in their bubble. And so, yeah, those are some of the things that really stood out to me.
Yeah, I mean, I think actually when we finished the project, I was looking at the homepage and having to think. I texted Penn. I was like, "Who graduated high school?" And I think Lynn, you did, right?
High school and
Yeah.
college.
That's so. Of all 8, Lynn is the only one that completed high school. At high school age. So when you talk about school to prison pipeline, low income zip codes, redlining, it's just like, oh man, you can really things start very young. Things start very early.
Yeah, and I'd want to add to some of the because I went in when I was 27. The youth that came in their teens, and watching them, my sisters that went out before me that were youth and going out as these, young adult women. I remember when I was working in the PIA optical making glasses, there was a girl who was so nervous about getting out because she wanted to know how to drive, but she'd never driven a car. She went in at like 15. And so I used books and pieces of paper and kind of gave her the idea of the foot pedals and how to turn a car on. and things. So I think for youth, youth that have been in that never went to a prom, never graduated from high school, all the firsts, that it made me feel really thankful, the opportunity to be a mother before I went in, to, bring souls into the world, to just basic things that people don't think about. Penn, you mentioned like forks and utensils again. I remember, well, you were there, the first restaurant that I went to, I was nervous to touch them again because we didn't have metal silverware for years. But for somebody who was, youth and didn't have that, it was really, it helped me actually during my incarceration experience to be around the younger girls at a point after I worked on me and was able to then pay it forward to the younger ladies. I liked working with them because they brought a different element in, but at the same time, it was almost healing because I was separated from my children at that point, and I still looked at them from a mother's eye and was able to give different insight. But then in re-entering, I can only imagine, because that's going in as a child, emerging as an adult into something completely foreign.
Well, I want to, I know that people want to ask questions. So just want to, Lynn, thank you so much. And Pendarvis and Brandon, thank you. Really wonderful.
Before we get to questions,
Yes.
I just want to know, a lot of people ask Ear Hustle, what can they do? Is there a
Oh, yeah.
call for action for Faces of Life?
Yeah.
Facing Life.
Everyday people. That story about the DMV.
Mm.
That could be you. I don't know if you're an educator. I don't know if you work at the library. If you work in public service of any sort, keep in mind that the person that you're talking to has a lived experience that might impact how they interact with you. Take some time, deal with them as people. That's the overall message.
Yeah.
And a lot of the legislation that we mentioned in that video up front, a bunch of that were ballot measures. So ballot measures are everyday voters deciding on these things. I remember when like Prop 57 was on the ballot. So, everyday people are choosing whether or not, this legislation passes, and people like Lynn and Earlonne come out or not. So
Yeah. Well, I really love what you said, because I think sometimes people feel overwhelmed that they can't make a difference. But then when you realize that everyone in this room has the ability to be kind to somebody or ask a question or offer help, that empowers all of us to make the world a better place. And yes, of course, we want to change the laws, but sometimes that can feel so overwhelming. But again, I love ending with that everyone in this room can actually make a difference simply through listening and yeah, being a little kinder.
Yeah, it's a little kumbaya, but really.
But it's true, but it really is true.
There's a lot of validity there. I know we're going to open it up
Yeah.
to the. I would be remiss if I didn't. Can we get a mic in Myra's hand, please? Please, Myra.
Yeah.
Is a beautiful soul. Myra, thank you so much for being here. In brief, Myra's relationship with us in this project is one of the sweetest evolutions. And like Lynn, you mentioned about like being in contact with men. Myra was very explicit, like, I don't talk to men at all, like not dealing with you at all. We got tacos, we broke bread. In the middle of breaking bread, I'll briefly share this. I cut the meeting short, 30 minutes into it. Like, I got to dip, I got to drive back to Sacramento, get my daughter right now. It's like, you driving back to Sacramento or in East Oakland, you driving back to Sacramento, take care of your daughter. But that like dedication to my daughter showed Myra my character and who I am in terms of a father. And she recognized that as what you had seen in terms of your grandfather, correct? And like,
yeah, it was one of the most important things that I seen about my grandfather, because he was a man who was always there for me. I mean, like, I was a kid and he had wooden blocks so I could drive his Cadillac because he was always drunk. So, I always wanted to be with granddaddy, drive that caddy, But one of the things about Penn, first of all, everybody know I love food. So he said, well, let's go out to eat. I'm like, cool. And I was like, where you going to take me? He said, tacos. I said, oh yeah, let's go. I said, they better be good. So they were good. But like he said, in the process of that really threw me a curveball, because prior to, I had a very, very bitter taste in my mouth for men. Past experiences, things that had happened to me, how my dad treated my mom, and stuff like that. And so when he told me he was going to get his daughter, it just like, I gotta like this guy. And then Brandon,
Then you
every
had to
time
warm
I
up to me. You didn't like me at first.
I really didn't. Let's just keep it 100. But my issue with him is, man, when you put that dude behind some cameras, you must do as he says. It ain't no getting around it. You must do as he says. So he'd be like, Myra, just move like this. And I'm like, move like what? He said, well, just turn right here. And I'm like, turn which way? He said, like right there. And I'm like, okay, how long I gotta stay like that? You know, but it's true. But in doing that too, I just want both of you men to know that you changed my life. You know, you set a standard for men, and I understand that they don't have to be perfect. You're just who you are. But you with your daughter, but Brandon, when you went to China or whatever that was, I asked him to bring me a present. You know, you think he's a guy, he ain't gonna remember. You know how men are, right? Well, when he came back, he brought me these little miniature like pillows that have kittens on them that were handmade. And I mean, they are beautiful, you know, and I was like, wow, you know, you realize you're the first guy that ever really gave me something that I'm keeping for the rest of my life.
Oh.
And this project, working with them, it changed how I feel about men. Not all men, but I'm willing to give you a chance, you know. And I just, you know, while I have the opportunity, I'd like to give kudos to my partner because, you know, she helped me walk through. She helped me navigate a lot when I came home from long distance because she was in LA and I was up here. And I would pick up the phone and be like, honey, and she'll be like, okay, just do this. You know, and like Lynn said, everybody doesn't have somebody. So when you are someplace and you recognize that individual, please help them. You know, people laugh or whatever, and that's on them. But at the end of the day, there may be one day you may need that person because you never know when you're going to see them again.
Yeah. Thank
Amen.
you.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank
Love
you.
hearing you speak.
I think Anissa, are you
Anissa.
taking over now?
Hello. All right. As a public high school teacher in the city, serving mainly Black and brown students, thinking about the kids and the statistics for incarceration, how do we prepare our children and ourselves for a world outside of high school and protecting them from becoming one of those statistics?
Who's that too?
That's to all of you
As
and everyone.
as a former educator, can you take that one?
I can.
Yeah.
I think one of the things that you can do is listen, be open, and offer resources. I mean, the old, quote, it takes a village. It does still take a village. I think now it may take two. However, just being that listening, opening heart, providing services, offering services, really people listen, but do you listen from your heart? Are you really hearing, if you're talking about students, what this individual has to say? Because as an educator, you're molding them, you're framing them. So what can you do? Continue with that. But I think a lot of the times it seems like now, I mean, I have younger nieces and nephews. They want to be heard, and that their little voices matter. I mean, they are our future. So if we're not nurturing and loving and educating the future, what is that future going to look like? So we need to take each individual with how would we want to be treated? How, hopefully some of us, we grew up and we weren't treated well, but we have the opportunity as educators, as grown adults to reach out where we can, and just little small random acts of kindness to help mold that future. Because we don't want to see, if all of our children end up with the pipeline like Brandon and Penn have both mentioned, if we ignore them, we ignore why are they acting out. If we ignore those cues and that goes unnoticed, their potential to end up in the system down the road or even as a youth is great, let alone if they have a family member or a mom or a dad who's incarcerated. Who cares for that child now? it can be a community responsibility that we respond to. And I think because California, as you saw by the statistics, California is #1 in incarceration. So what do we do with all those youth? It becomes a societal responsibility, and almost can be a moral responsibility. If this child is ultimately going to be a working adult by the time, taking care of us when we're older, wouldn't we want them to reach their full potential as opposed to just locking them up and throwing them a key and fend for yourselves in that out of sight, out of mind mentality? When a child is either shut down or acting out, there's some undealt with trauma that child hasn't received help for. So instead of ignoring it, let's address those issues so it doesn't get to a point where they're ending up in state correctional facilities when it could have. If a child is addicted to something, it was probably a behavior that was learned in their environment. So how can we unlearn it? And so those are questions that we can ask, that we could either be ignorant or we can be part of the solution, not part of the problem.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. And a big shout out to our SFUSD staff and teachers and librarians. You're doing the work. A question let's go with our question from Zoom. What has been the biggest challenge of making the project?
In journalism, there's this fascinating 180 that happens from pitch. You get excited, you got an idea, you pitch it, and the editor accepts it, and you're like, oh, shit, I gotta go do it now. So that part, yeah, the doing it. It's one thing to think about it, but then to go to find these people. And like we could have done a film, we could have done a reenactment. But to find the individuals, we wanted to make sure that there were people from clear across the state, that women were represented, that multiple races, different backgrounds. And so meeting these check marks, it was difficult at the start. And so it took a lot of time for us to do the background research as well as find the individuals to represent this story. And then once we had the individuals, we were pretty much locked in. Staying in contact was difficult. And actually condensing people's whole life stories into digestible pieces on the website was difficult. And
Yeah, I mean, to that beginning part of, we initially thought the project would take a year and it would just be, so easy. But it ended up taking like at least 6 months just to meet everyone and also to do research and to learn. And so shout outs to Nigel, because she was one of the people that when we were first starting and we were like, Nigel, can we buy you coffee and ask
At
about
Phil's.
like what's going on? And you were like, sure. So thank you for that.
Sure.
yeah, so yeah, educating ourselves, finding the individuals, doing the work. And then once we had it done about this time last year, finding a publication to actually run it. We're like, hey, this is a really important story. We're on ground zero of like a major shift in how the United States prison system is operating. You should run this story. And it took a little while, but yeah, we published in April through the Los Angeles Times. And so, yeah.
So the shift you're speaking of, and that is, are you talking about the release of so many people because of the pandemic?
No, the state of California was federally mandated to depopulate its prisons. So because it was overcrowded, the prison system as a whole had to get down its population to a point that was still overcrowded on paper. It's a whole convoluted thing. So even before the pandemic, the prison system was slowly but surely depopulating. And then once the pandemic hit, it dropped even further to 100% occupancy at like one point in the middle of 2020. Since then, it's slowly starting to creep back up. But yes, largely that's the change that we were talking about.
Thank you. Lynn, what's happened to your brothers and how are they now?
To my brothers, I have 4 brothers. One of them actually passed away about 1.5 years ago unexpectedly. So one of them has passed away. One is raising a family and doing really well. And another is a chef. He's also successful. And another one is working. And, they're all working and functional in their own way.
All right. As someone who is interested in urban planning, they often think about a car-centric suburban American environment and how that impacts individuals' ability to connect with society. Did you observe this aspect of a constricted environment hindering or otherwise impacting the reentry of formerly incarcerated folks?
You might have to say the beginning of that one.
It's a deep question. It's about urban planning and like car-centric world
Yeah,
and how that blocks everybody off from being with each other.
just clearly saying anything that impacts us impacts people who've been incarcerated tenfold. So we have housing issues. Housing is even more impactful. And I would ask, please, my friend, could you pass the mic to Myra so we could talk about housing specifically for women who've been incarcerated who don't have children? Because that's a really interesting point.
So one of the problems with reentry for women, if you're not an addict, you have children or a veteran in certain situations or married, there is no assistance for you. Okay. And that's me. I'm not married. I don't have any children. My family is wherever they want to be and they can stay there. And, you know, there's a dynamic of things going on. When I came home, the hardest thing for me to do was, as I transitioned out of the program I was in, was to find housing. And then it was to find housing at a reasonable price. I mean, like $3,200 for a 2-bedroom apartment. I'm like, what? Man, I'm barely making, what I need to make to survive. I had to save $3,000 in order to transition out of the program. And that's what they wanted for a deposit. So where was I supposed to get the rest of it? I got very fortunate through my church, Market Street Seventh-day Adventist, that, they were able to assist me with housing. If it wasn't for my church, there wouldn't be none. So, I've had this conversation with Brandon and Penn, and one of the things that I'm trying to do is buy a house so that when women lifers come home that are in the situation that I'm in, they have some place to go and get assistance. Because like I said, once again, hear me clearly, if you're not an addict or you're a mother with children or you have a husband or a family, there are no solid resources for single women. There's just none, because you have nothing to give them to get something back.
Thank you for sharing.
May I add to that?
Please.
And that's actually now I was fortunate enough, like I said, as a veteran, to go to a veterans reentry program. However, after transitioning out of that program and now being in a different county, I know it says in the thing, it was when I was living in Monterey. However, now I'm in Fresno County, and there is a large influx of people on probation and parolees, and especially for women, the resources. I went to greet one of the women who had just come out, and where they have them housed is not safe. It's an area that you would like. When I got out, I did not feel comfortable. I'm like, is there somebody that can escort me around? It was just, again, it was in an unsafe area. There isn't enough housing period for reentry, but especially like Myra was saying, for women. And that's something actually my husband and I are looking to the future for, is we're hoping to implement reentry for women, period, in the future, because we know how important it is for someone to come out and for successful reentry, to be able, just the simplicity of having a safe roof over your head where you can learn to navigate again. But again, currently the resources aren't there for men and women, but more so for women. And so there is a huge need for that. And we want our communities to be safe, that we return to. And as more people come out of the system, because the system is changing, to be able to continue to work on themselves and to reintegrate into society safely. But with that comes, they also need safe and affordable housing. So there is a huge need for that. Thank you.
So this question's come up a lot during all of the events that we've had, and I encourage you to pick up that brochure and look at all of the places that we've been hosting as people who are doing events. What organizations are accepting volunteers to work with incarcerated people or people who are newly reentering? Literary skills, etc. I know one massive literary place that takes volunteers. So here, and we work with reentry folks, and we definitely love volunteers, but there are so many. Do any of you have any top choices? Lynn?
Thank you. I actually currently work for the Anti-Recidivism Coalition, and there is an office in LA, there is an office in Sacramento, but you can volunteer just about anywhere through the Anti-Recidivism Coalition. It is a good, they're very reputable. You can look them up on their website, antirecidivismcoalition.org, in helping people reentry. And if you want to really volunteer, they have a lot of opportunity there.
If you go to the project's website, facing.life, if you go on the credits page below Penn and I, there's a special thanks, and all of the organizations, reentry orgs, and everything that we met with at the beginning of the project or that helped us are all listed there. Any of those, they're all mostly California based, would be a great place to help. And we met Lynn at the gate, right when she came out, and she's saying her family was out of state, so it was me there to greet her after 20 years. We'd never met IRL. And it was two women from the California Coalition for Women's Prisoners, which is a really rad organization that runs on volunteer labor. Two volunteers met her at the gate, gave her a cell phone, and took her to her first breakfast. So that's a great.
Yeah, same on the Ear Hustle website. If you go to the FAQ section, we have a list of different organizations that are always looking for volunteers.
Yeah, I would add to California Coalition for Women Prisoners, Root and Rebound, Critical Resistance, All of Us or None. I'm sure all of those may be mentioned on the website as well, but all of those are volunteer based.
Also, you can check out San Francisco Public Library's Jail and Reentry Services Department on our website. So we have a very small and mighty team that serves inside, but also answers reference questions from all sorts of prisons, almost the largest from this side of the Mississippi, from prisons from this side. So there's also a lot of resources on that page. And then if you join us for the reception upstairs, there'll be resources up there. There's little yellow pages up there. Yes, Maya. Can we get Maya? Let's get Maya a mic again.
Myra.
Myra. Oh, yes, my alma mater.
San Francisco Community College. I'm there right now getting my certification for addiction and recovery. And they have a program there. They have ARC, and then they also have, I forget the other one. But they have two programs there, and they're constantly looking for volunteers to come and work with us, because all of us aren't like computer literate, or they're struggling, uppers, downers, all arounders. We're like getting ready to get into that book, but just go online, and Eric Lewis and Carlos Webster. Those are the two gentlemen that take care of that program.
Lots of places for you to volunteer, lots. Or don't hesitate to donate some money.
Sound like they're gonna be volunteers. They got a lot of spots to choose from.
Lots of ways to do this. One question, how about from Earlonne and Lynn, and I would say anybody else in the crowd, can you talk about the role that books played while you were incarcerated, and what was information access like inside?
Books play a big role. I think they play a bigger role when you're in solitary confinement, because that's all you have sometimes is books. You might not even have your property. I remember I was in solitary confinement. They had lost my property forever. And I remember the one book I read, I was crying because it was 1,100 pages, and it was It. Remember Stephen King, It? But yeah, books do serve a purpose in prison. They do.
Did you finish it?
I did. It took a while. I made sure it took a while, but if I would have seen that book, I would have passed it by on a regular, 1,100 pages, I can't do it. But books do serve a role because they do take your imagination and take you out of the place you're in and put you somewhere else.
Earlonne, you said it really well. Yeah, books, I think they were essential. Just reading a book, it can take you out of the place, it still stimulates your imagination. It's where a lot of self-help and introspection can still take place. There's a lot to be said for a book still. Valuable on the inside. Just reading is, it's a good thing, stimulates your mind, stimulates everything. And in you know, in a proactive way, depending on, I don't know about reading it, but
Pennywise.
yeah, I'm not a fan of clowns. But yeah, books were really essential. I mean, and even if it's something donating to a library, a prison library, county library, books are still a really important resource while you're inside, especially because it does give you opportunities where, you know, I could have read a National Geographic book and, you know, took a trip outside of, you know, my immediate surroundings. So books are really important.
There's a really great website called Prisoners Literature Project, and they do, they send books directly to prisoners who ask for them. So they're get requests. And as volunteers, you can either straight up buy the books that they're requesting and they'll get them to the folks inside. So
One
great
City,
resource.
One Book is doing a great
Thank you.
Yeah.
great book, right?
Yes.
We do. We have one great book, which is available on our first floor right now. This is Ear Hustle. Absolutely. Any more questions out there? Anything that our other two subjects from Facing Life would like to say? Fahim, Myra, anything?
Fahim, like, oh,
Alejandro's coming with the mic for you.
Brief, I would just like to say the project, what they're doing and about the school to prison pipeline, it needs to be cut, right? And the support, what they're asking, I back that. You know, just keep supporting what they're doing. Everyone come together collectively and just on an understanding basis say, hey, we need to save these kids out here so we can save our future. That's all I want to say.
Man, thank you.
no, drop the mic, man. Just drop it.
Don't
Thanks,
drop it.
Fahim. Peace, bro.
Myra?
Myra, like, I might get on the stage. Come on up here.
Nah, y'all look good up there. I think the one thing that I want to say is that this was a journey for us. And I think I speak in volume for all the lifers that we appreciate the honesty and the camaraderie that we gained with these two gentlemen, being able to just be ourselves. That's one thing that's really hard, is to be yourself all the time, you know, and we were able to do that, trust me, and it was fun. But I encourage you, please, when it comes down to the children, I believe in what Lynn is saying. If you don't listen to what they have to say, you're never going to know what's going on. Please engage in conversation with your children. You know, like, even if it's just 10 minutes, hey, let me get that phone for 10 minutes and let's talk. Don't look at their phone. I mean, you know, I know y'all got them all hooked up anyway with all the tracking them and everything, but that's the one thing that I miss about my mother. My mother passed in 16. I came home in 18. And that's the one thing I wish I could do. I wish she could see this, you know, but like, you know, and even what Fahim is saying, please pay attention to your children. This world is crazy out there. People are telling them things and showing them things that you just have no idea of what's really going on. So if your kid approaches you and you're doing that job, man, drop that pen, drop that phone, whatever. Please, I beg of you to listen. I went to prison when I was 21 years old, and I'm 61 now. And my life is gone. Don't do that to your child if you can prevent it. That's the only thing I'm gonna ask of you and beg of you. Give them that 10 minutes. It'll be such a difference in their lives.
Thank you.
Indeed.
Thank you. Thank you.
Mic drop.
Final words from the panelists? Final words from panelists?
No,
Final
come hang
words?
out. Fifth floor? Is that where we're going?
That's where we're going.
Elevator straight up.
All right, we're
Yeah.
gonna head on. There is a reception. See a glimpse of Brandon and Pendarvis's work. It's not moving. It's not subtle. But the website will be live up there, so we can head up there. The 5th floor, the bridge. It's a little hard to find. 5th floor, west side of the building towards Larkin. The corner. We have some refreshments, some food. Come up and join us. Meet us there. We'll be there shortly.
Thank you all for coming.
Thank you.
Thank y'all. Appreciate it.